We've reached the final day of media availability of the bye week. We'll be back here on Monday, back into game week mode. A couple interesting interviews after practice today. Mikel Onu, he's been a godsend for this program, on the field and for the media as well. Just really well spoken.
He really is. I mean, that guy's played a lot of football. I think it was 36 games at SMU before coming here. Just a lot of football. I think he's helped out those guys in the back end of that defense so much. Based on hearing him and having guys talk about him, I think he's helped them a lot this year. And he's good to talk to. He's a cerebral guy. He studies the game and knows it pretty well. And he's always entertaining to talk to.
And he's kind of a perfectionist. He was lamenting the fact that he didn't get that interception in the Arizona State game. That would have been a really tough play for him to make.
That would have been a tough play. I mean, I'm not surprised he didn't catch it. So it's funny that he's beating himself up, and he was kind of funny. He said he heard from his mom and dad, and how Coach Summers this week said that's why we recruit height. And Mikhail's not very tall, so I joked with him earlier this week. If your arms were like just 1 inch longer, you catch that. And he goes, I know. So
he said he rewatched it 1,000 times.
I'm not sure there's much more given his physical stature and ability. I'm not sure there's anything more he could have done to catch that ball.
Also had a chance to talk to James Stefano, always entertaining with the media as well.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's one of our favorite guys, right? And that guy's, he's kicking well and feeling good. I mean, he's healthy this year, and it's always fun to talk to him. I mean, James was. He said he would give Alex Kinney an Oscar if he could for that performance on the roughing the holding there at the end, and I thought it was a good sell. I thought it was a legit penalty, but I thought it was a good sell.
I've asked a lot of people since Saturday's game, have you ever heard of roughing the holder before, and have yet to get a yes on that? Such a bizarre way that game ended.
I'm not surprised that James Stefano's never heard of it, though, because he hasn't been in football very long. So I'm not surprised with him, but just to throw that out at him, that he hasn't heard of those things. There's probably a lot of things in football he hasn't heard of, but I haven't heard of that before either.
I had a long chat with Tony Brown, working on a story with just the relationship he's had with Darren Cheverini. Just a really interesting story. He plays for a former CU player at La Mirada High School. Troy Walters was the receivers coach here, is now at Nebraska. It almost got him here to Boulder, but it was that relationship that he had with Darren Cheverini that brought him there to Texas Tech. Had great success there as a true freshman. Didn't mesh well with the other receivers coach, and has a change of scenery, and it's just got a really cool story how it's kind of ending. Well, not quite ending, but his last season here at CU.
Yeah, he's playing some great football right now, and they've needed him big time because LaVisca has not obviously been what we thought he was going to be, and that's not his fault. But Tony Brown's really stepped up and had a great season, and it's nice to see him. He's a good, humble kid, been through a lot, been through a big journey, and it's fun to see him have a great season and end it the right way.
We'll be breaking down Arizona next week, but just how important is this game? After next Saturday's game, you're going on the road to play at Oregon on Friday night with a short week. Then the following week, you're going out to Pullman. It seems like one of the more important games on the schedule just because it is such a winnable game for them.
I think it's a huge game for the Buffs because you've got this one at home. You've got to protect your home field. Arizona has not played great football. They're not a great team. They don't play great defense. I think you've got to get this one because I'm not going to say the Buffs are for sure going to lose the next two, but those are tough tasks to go into Eugene on a Friday night and into Pullman where, in my time covering this team, I've been out to Pullman twice, and they've both been miserable experiences for this team. Now, under a different coaching staff, maybe it's different, but those are two tough tasks. So I think you've got to get Arizona, set yourself up for maybe taking some momentum into that two-game swing.
You have a book that came out. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, 100 Things Colorado Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. By Triumph Books is a publisher, and they've done this book for a number of different teams. You can, if you go on Amazon and Google 100 Things Fans, you'll see it for Wisconsin and Utah and the Packers and Detroit Tigers, a whole bunch of teams. And so this one, I did the Broncos a few years ago, and they asked me to do the Buffs this last year, and it was a ton of fun. I mean, just going through the history of Colorado athletics, and it's not just football. There's a lot of football in there, mostly football, but a ton of men's basketball in there. There's women's basketball. There's soccer. There's volleyball. There's wrestling. There's baseball.
Okay.
So, it goes back to the beginnings of CU athletics, and also because it's things to do. There's a couple chapters on some fun things around here like Pearl Street and the Flatirons and Eldora, things like that.
As you were researching and writing that book, were there any stories that you really enjoyed telling, or maybe that caught you by surprise that you hadn't heard about that is pretty cool?
Yeah, there was. I mean, I love history, and so I love learning about the guys from way back. And like Fred Folsom, just his story was unique, and football was so different back then. And his contract. In fact, I just looked at the actual original contract for Fred Folsom yesterday, and how it's one page, and it was $200 a year for the salary, and there was a clause in there that allowed him to leave the team when he needed to practice his law, go to his law practice. So Fred Folsom was an interesting story. Hatfield Chilson was a guy that just made the Hall of Fame here a couple years ago. He was kind of the inventor of the jump pass that like Tim Tebow made famous.
Yeah.
Just a little guy that invented that. So I love the old history stuff. And 1925, they go out to Hawaii for a couple of games, and it takes like a month to get there and back and play 2 football games. So yeah, I think I love some of the old stuff. But there's things from every era. I mean, every era is covered. From the rise in 2016, Philip Lindsay, things like that. So you got a little of everything.
And you have a book signing coming up on Friday?
Yeah, Friday night at Barnes & Noble in Boulder at 6 o'clock. And I don't know how many people show up, but happy to have fans show up, and I'll autograph the book for them.
Well, I got a copy, so I'm excited. The next road trip they go on, I'm going to take that on the plane with me. And I've covered this program for a while, but I'm sure there's a lot of stories in there that I haven't heard before, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that even people that have been diehard fans for years, it'll either be you'll learn some things, or it'll just be a nice trip down memory lane. And I've heard referred to as these books are kind of referred to as a good bathroom book, and they kind of are. It's one of those books that you don't have to read cover to cover. You can jump around, and chapters are not super long. The first few are, but there's some chapters that are 1 page long that you can just read real quick and move on. So
all right.
It's a good format. I like it.
Very cool. Well, we'll be back on Monday. We're going to be jumping right back into game week mode.